Welcome to Alt World Discovery. In our first episode, we are going to look at the alternative world, written and narrated by Douglas of UAP Channel and Campbell of Autodidactic. Music by UAP. Episode 1, Tartaria. Whether you think you know about Tartaria or if you've never heard of it, in this debut episode of Alt World Discovery, you're going to hear from the Tartarians themselves. You're going to learn about their troubled history under the cruel fist of oppressive communist rule, and discover the Great Tartary. More than just a region, the Tartarian Empire stretched across most of the known world. But little, if much of anything, is known about the Great Tartarian Empire today, though many live who have descended from the Tartarians themselves. Their future depends on recognizing and remembering, discovering what once was, to know what could be. It's time to discover world history, the Empire of Tartary. What once was, what could be. I'm your host, Douglas UAP, along with Campbell of Autodidactic Channel. We welcome you to discover inaccessible, hidden earth, hidden history, true history, the alternative world discovered. We thank you for joining us. The Great Tartary. This old world, located roughly in the region of Asia known as Siberia now, that part of Russia and the former Soviet Union, are the last vestiges of the Tartarian Empire as it shrunk. In the maps that do remain, we find even today Google Earth Street View doesn't cover much of that region. Much of it remains hidden from the rest of the world. It's considered so remote that it doesn't come up on almost any kind of investigation. The former capital city, Kazan, has glorious architecture and much that we may glean from the structures, technology in the architecture, whether it be atmospheric electricity, resonant energy, towers, domes, and octagonal power production locations, repurposed, rewritten, hidden in plain sight. Almost completely written out of official history. It's relegated to a mere memory of a region, perhaps, no longer an empire, but the evidence remains. Though it may be a silhouette, there is much we may gather and have gathered of this former civilization, nearly extinguished, canceled from history. Almost, but not quite.
When you went to school, were you ever taught that there was a country called Tartaria? Chances are you weren't. And the strange thing is that this country not only existed less than a few hundred years ago, but it was also one of the largest, if not the largest country on Earth, at least at one point. So why has Tartaria been erased from our history? History is a set of lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte. Or let us take the matter of history, which, along with religion, language and literature, constitute the core of a people's cultural heritage. Here again, the communists have interfered in a shameless manner. For example, on 9th of August 1944, the Central Committee of the Communist Party, sitting in Moscow, issued a directive ordering the party's Tatar Provincial Committee to proceed to a scientific revision of the history of Tartaria, to liquidate serious shortcomings and mistakes of a nationalistic character committed by individual writers and historians in dealing with Tatar history. In other words, Tatar history was to be rewritten. Let us be frank, was to be falsified in order to eliminate the references to great Russian aggressions and to hide the facts of the real course of Tatar-Russian relations. And this was no isolated case. In every Muslim area within the USSR, historians on orders of the Communist Party have rewritten history to distort the facts so that the Russians appear always in a good light. Needless to say, histories which present the facts truthfully have been withdrawn and destroyed so that the present and future generations of Muslims are forever denied the chance of learning the true facts of their nation's past. And that is an excerpt, declassified CIA document that was created in 1957.
We have been learning much from the architecture that remains. These octagonal forms, these towers once contained mercurial connections to the atmosphere, perhaps collecting energy and harnessing it, generating it through an octagonal shape in a similar way, much more elegant and efficient, however, much more beautiful in the past versus today. The culture, the civilizations that harnessed and used this energy have been almost completely extinguished, but we're starting to learn how the architecture was functional. There was a rhyme and reason for the forms and the shapes of the structural embodiments that we have looked into. Form follows function, yet what we see is so beautiful, it was hidden in plain sight, thought merely to be aesthetic. The science backs up what they could have been, and further investigation reveals they oftentimes must have been. Who knows how far the technology went? We can only glean and surmise things from what remains, yet what remains, even though it has been altered, repurposed, it has been relegated to something less than what it once was. We see signs, and whether through myths, legends, and other stories of what it may have been before some kind of massive catastrophe. To understand the technology that may have been lost or subdued, suppressed through this catastrophe, through this reset, if you will, of history, one could look to Nikola Tesla, perhaps the greatest mind of engineering, who happens to hail from the former Tartarian Empire, at least what region it once occupied under occupation, was one of risk and tragedy. But does his genius come from his own mind or from his culture, from his understanding, however it may be, however it came about, from what was lost? Perhaps ancient existing knowledge. We know they suppress the advancement of certain technologies that could exist, like the flying car, perhaps scrying mirrors. And we find these stone doors and devices. So many things are found in stone that wouldn't have been carved. The narrative of the carving of stone doesn't hold up for the form, shape, and lack of function of so many finds that, after some catastrophe, exist in forms and made of materials that we don't fully understand, though some we do. We have evidence of electric cars being used. Many researchers suggest or hypothesize that Nikola Tesla simply was informed with the knowledge from the old world through the Crimean region, through the Tatar Empire. Coming up, you'll hear more about the subjugation of the Tatarian Empire's history. The subjugation of the Tatarian Empire's history from before the Crimean War around the Black Sea, through the Bolshevik Revolution and the advent of communism, through the devastation and confusion of the Second World War. Russia and other nations of the one world system, government, suppresses still the existence of what's left of the former Tatarian Empire, whose reach extends beyond perhaps anything written that remains. Is it any surprise then that the world's greatest inventor of all time would emerge from this region of the world with its murky past? His origins are just as murky as the circumstances that nearly caused his early demise several times over. Is he one person who made it out of hidden history? Or an agent of that system, that very system used for damage control and declassification of suppressed technology? It's a valid question. Let's look more into Nikola Tesla's life and work. As far as my research has gone, he's not officially from any sort of Tatarian Empire, but he credits his inventive genius to an eidetic memory that he said was genetic from his mother. Whether genetic memory or perhaps a coded message of the way that this knowledge was handed down. Could it be that his interest in Serbian epic mythic poems, his interest in the past that was being suppressed through war after war and manufactured crises of all kinds, perhaps pandemics as well, maybe this survived the purge of culture, technology, history, now hidden, censored, something that is becoming more and more apparent to be an unfortunate facet or endemic problem of modern civilization. We see it happening today. We see evidence that it has happened in the past. And it makes sense that there would be a damage control maneuver that he would use. And these technologies come to us in a tessellated pattern. Tessellated meaning repeated. Some researchers go so far as to hypothesize that Nikola Tesla was a mere character even the name Tesla being invented, indicative of his role in reintroducing these tessellated technologies. Also, as is hypothesized, that the World's Fairs were set for this purpose, to display the old world architecture and technology as a reintroduction to a reset society. And they say it's no surprise that Nikola Tesla himself was a big part of certain World's Fairs, such as the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, the Columbian Exposition, where he introduced alternating current from a single source distributed, ostensibly in response to the problem of lighting that World's Fair. We have these inexplicable fires that destroyed much of this architecture, as fires destroyed Nikola Tesla's laboratory. Were they natural? As far as the history and the people of Tartaria, their portrayal from Hollywood to the other side of the Iron Curtain, the portrayal has been mostly to villainize them.
Con bloodsucker. You're gonna have to do your own dirty work now. Do you hear me? Do you?
Kirk. Kirk, you're still alive, my old friend.
Still, old friend. You've managed to kill just about everyone else, but like a poor marksman, you keep missing the target. Con. Con, you've got Genesis.
But you don't have me. You are going to kill me, Khan. You're going to have to come down here. You're going to have to come down here.
I've done far worse than kill you. I've hurt you. And I wish to go on hurting you. I shall leave you as you left me, as you left her, marooned for all eternity in the center of a dead planet. Buried alive. Buried alive.
Many Vikings have come down from the north. There is a limit to my patience. We are told your Viking gods punish those who slay women. I'm ready to respect your gods to spare you. But only if you tell me the things I wish to know. You have yet to be put to the torture. See that she receives the honors of a high rank. Now then, how many Viking ships have come down from the north?
Now let's hear them in their own words talk about this, and one might contemplate whether they themselves have been able to pass down the true history in its entirety, or if they have, whether it has yet even been spoken in the public recently. It's difficult to gauge how successful censorship has been. Looking back, one can only try to uncover as much of this alternative world history as can be discovered. And that's what this channel is all about. So now let's have a listen to the Tartars in their own words. We, Crimean Tartars, are the indigenous people of Crimea. In the 15th century, we created our own state, the Crimean Khanate. At the end of the 18th century, after the capture of the Crimea by Russia, we were deprived of our statehood. Back at that time, our population decreased by several times. In 1944, another test fell to the lot of our people, the deportation of the whole nation by the communists, as a result of which almost half of the Crimean Tatars were killed. Our history was rewritten by Soviet scholars, and now it continues to be written by Russian scholars. Our language, customs, and even we as a people have become a taboo. But we survived. We are hardworking and very peaceful people. Fate has prepared us quite a few tests. But despite these challenges, we are living in the homeland, in the beautiful Crimea. We continue to speak our native language and instill love for it to our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. We are heirs to the rich, tangible, and intangible cultural heritage. These are the best examples of architecture of the Crimean Khanate and unique craft practices of golden embroidery, jewelers, armorers, great literature, poetry of the Crimean Khans, numerous theological writings of our theologians, expressive Crimean Tatar ornament, semantics of which is understood by every Crimean Tatar. Our Crimean Tatar language is the most universal among Turkic languages. The preservation and enhancement of the precious heritage left by our ancestors are the keys of our future prosperity and security of the people. We are a tolerant people. Many different ethnic groups peacefully coexisted in Crimea during the time of the Crimean Khanate. Although they were Muslims, the rulers of Crimea supported Christian and Jewish communities in the peninsula. The Khans personally financed the construction of churches. Crimean Tatars did not conquer foreign lands, and they did not enslave people. Despite being highly educated, my parents worked in greenhouses and in the marketplace when they returned from their deportation just to survive.
We are a European people. Values such as freedom of speech, democracy, respect for human and national rights are important to us. The majority of Crimean Tatars my age know at least 3 languages. They're native Crimean Tatar, Ukrainian and Russian. Many of them have also mastered English. It is normal for us to study foreign languages, histories and cultures.
I want to have a big family with lots of brothers and sisters, and we all live in our house in our native Crimea.
I'd love to sing the songs that I learned from my grandmother and tell her to dance Haytalma and Tum Tum.
Tartaria was a country that covered the region that we now know as Russia, and at one point it also included China, India, and across to the Middle East, and even up to Eastern Europe. So as you can see, Tartaria at one point covered most of the known world, but once again, it has been wiped from our history. So in this short introduction, I just wanted to show you just some proof that Tartaria did exist and was, in fact, a country. Because if you look in books today, they will tell you that Tartaria is a region. Tartary, or Tartaria, was a blanket term used in Western European literature and cartography for a vast part of Asia bounded by the Caspian Sea, the Ural Mountains, the Pacific Ocean, and the northern borders of China and India, at a time when this region was largely unknown to European geographers. The active use of the toponym can be traced from the 13th to the 19th century in European sources. Tartary became the most common name for Central Asia in a series of negatively coloured names that had no connection with the real polities or ethnic groups of the region until the 19th century. European knowledge of the area remained extremely scarce and fragmentary. In modern English-speaking tradition, the region formerly known as Tartary is usually called Inner or Central Eurasia. Much of this area consists of plains, and the main population of which in the past was engaged in animal husbandry. And they have included a map which I'm not sure what they're trying to say here, because they just said that it doesn't exist and it was just a region, and cartographers, map makers, didn't know anything about it. But here's a map. This looks old and it says Tartaria. I mean, obviously they're trying to make the claim that it's a region, but as we've seen, there are maps of this place, and there's also been people who have travelled there, and we also have flags. And of course, only countries have flags. Regions do not have flags or kings. We have kings as well. And as you can see in this picture, the boundaries did change and it started to shrink over time until it completely disappeared in the 1800s, the early to mid 1800s. And in this picture we can even see the Great Wall of China here, because China was once a part of Tartaria, and then they obviously had a split and a wall was built. Now, another thing to notice is all these cities with castles in them, and we'll see more of those later. They were everywhere. As you can see in this map, there's big cities all through here, and this is all Tartaria. So how do we know that Tartaria was a country and not just a region, as they try and tell us in the storybooks today? Well, for a starter, we have flags, and you'll start to see a lot of familiar symbols as well in these Tartarian flags and symbology, and this of course is an owl of the Empire of Tartary. And Tartaria is also referred to as Tartary. And here we can see Carte de la Petite Tartary, the map of small Tartary. And here we have Tartary Nogay. In this map we can see Tartaria is shrinking again. You know, it's still a country. So here we have a book, and this book is from 1654 or I-6454, and this is Bellum Tartaricum, or the conquest of the great and most renowned empire of China by the invasion of the Tartars, who in the last 7 years have wholly subdued the vast empire, together with a map of the provinces. So this book is about the Tartars invading China. And this is the magnificent and present emperor of the Western Tartars, this guy here. So that's what a Tartar looked like in 1650. This is the voyages and travels of the ambassadors from the Duke of Holstein to the great Duke of Muscovy and the King of Persia, containing a complete history of Muscovy, Tartary and Persia. And interestingly, this book was begun in the year DC 33. This is the Historia de la Conquista de la China por el Tartaro. So this is Spanish, I think. I'm not exactly sure what it says, but basically the history of the conquest of China by the Tartars again. And here again we have a Chinese or a Cathay holding the crown up to the Tartars. Now this fine looking gentleman is Adil Gire, the Grand Camo of Tartary. So this was a king, a leader. And as you can see, the feathers in his cap and looking a bit like a Frisian cap. This is the Tartarian double-headed eagle. Now, no doubt you will have seen this symbol around, and like most symbols, they have been usurped and meanings have been changed, but you will see this eagle associated with Tartaria a lot. And of course, it's holding the Globus Cruciber here in its hand, the holy hand grenade, and a scepter in the other, which of course are still used by royalty. Here are some more Tartarians back in the day, and the story is that they were known for their archery skills. Here are some Tartarian women, and you can see they lived in these, or at least stayed in, camped in these fairy tale tents. The tents that we see in all the tales, the fairy tales that aren't supposed to be true. Here's another map of Tartaria with the ocean of Tartaricus. And here we have another Tartary. Now these are modern day, well, not today, but 50 years ago or so, Tartars. And as you can see, they do look pretty similar to the old pictures we get. They've all got these hats on all the time. And the women always, they wear the coins and the things over their pineal glands. Here are some more. And this guy, of course, got like a turban looking thing on. So they do, there are similarities in dress to the, Islamic people. But look at this lady, she looks like a princess from a fairy tale book. And here we go again, almost, the same look there. So these are Tartars. And these, obviously Tartaria was a big country, so there are differences in the way that they dress. So here's just a few more pictures of the Tartars and what they look like, and you'll see the similarities. And they also have similarities with, what we call gypsies and Berbers in the way that they dress. Now here we have a king, or the Grand Mogul, the Emperor Dindostan, and it's a little hard to read down here, but he was one of the rulers or kings of Tartary. And you'll see this is starting to look crown-like on his head, but not like the crowns that we see today, but still with the, he's got his scepter. So there's so many similarities, with the ruling class that we see around us today. Let's say that. So, why is Tartaria being erased from history? Why is it being hidden from us? Because as we can see, a lot of the symbolism from Tartaria is now being used by those who are trying to still rule us. And they tell us that Tartaria didn't exist and it was just a region, yet we have it shown on maps as a country, we have flags, we have kings or emperors, and we even have an emperor's list or a king's list of the kings of Tartaria, among many other things. So There is all this evidence proving that it did exist. But again, the question is, why is it being hidden from us?